Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back to this lunch hour sew along with Kimberbell. I'm Kim Christopherson, and you are here because you want to make the lucky us. I'm putting my rulers together. You want to make the lucky us pillow. Oh my goodness, this is part 2 of making this darling pillow, and all this week we are getting together. Of course, we got together on Monday. Today's Wednesday, and then we'll finally finish it off on Friday. Can you believe that you're going to get this whole thing done in a week, less than a week? You absolutely can. And of course, if you can't catch this live, or if you are needing to leave a little bit early, no problem at all. You can find this tutorial. It's always going to be recorded, and you'll always find it on our Facebook page and our YouTube channel. Now, if you like and subscribe to our YouTube channel, you'll always be notified when these are available. And it also has a nice little playlist feature so that you can find all of the lunch hour sew-alongs very easily over on our YouTube channel. So check that out. Like and subscribe while you're there. All right, so on Monday, we talked about a few things like the background quilting and adding your appliques. We did this block right here with the darling gold coins made out of leather and glitter. Can we get a close-up of that? That is just so darn cute. Okay, so we did that, or we talked about that. We actually did the background quilting and the applique on this. Let's see, we did it on the glitter one, but your homework was to do all three, right, before today. And then we also went over some tips and ideas for doing this vase block, including the dimensional lace flowers as well. So if you missed Monday's episode, it's not too late to catch that. You can certainly go back and do that. Now, today we're going to talk about a few other parts of this pillow that will make it really easy for you to complete. First of all, this block, this double pinwheel block, is something that you're going to be able to do in the hoop. Okay, so we're going to talk about that today. And by doing it that way, you're going to get perfect points. Look at that. All of those points are just perfectly done, as I like to say. Then I'm going to show you how to do the background quilting on top of this piece quilt block. So we'll do that. We will also go over, let's see, there was one other thing that I wanted to talk about. Oh, I'm also going to show you how to use the orange pop rulers to square up your quilt blocks and give you some tips for that. And the other thing is that I know oftentimes someone with, say, a 5x7 hoop might think that they cannot do the background quilting on a block such as this if they have a 5x7 hoop. They think, oh, I only can do background quilting if I have a larger hoop. Well, the good news is that I'm going to show you today how do you do the background quilting even if you have a smaller hoop. Isn't that awesome? And I'm going to show you how easy it is to do with a little something called clear blue tiles. All right? So let's go ahead. First things first, I'm going to show you how to square up your quilt blocks. All right? So this was the quilt block that we did on Monday. Let's take a closer look here. There we go. Isn't that darling? Don't you love that Kimberbell glitter applique that's on there? And then I showed you, of course, how to do that background plaid quilting, but now we need to square this up to a 4.5 by 4.5 inch size. And we're going to be able to do that very easily with the square set of orange pop rulers. Now, in this square set, you're actually getting multiple sizes of rulers, which is really awesome. First of all, you're going to get, let's go with this center one here. They all nest one inside each other. But this block here is going to help you square up half square triangles. And it's got 2 different sizes to be able to do that. So I love that. It's kind of just like a bonus, if you will, to this set. This is where orange pop rulers comes in. There's 3 different sizes. This is going to be your 4.5 by 4.5 inch block. As you can see, there's a window there, and that's what measures 4.5 by 4.5. It's the inside. The next size block up is the 6.5 by 6.5 inch size, and beyond that, it's an 8.5 by 8.5 8.5-inch square. And then if you want to even go beyond that to the next outer size, you're going to have a 10.5 by 10.5-inch block. So you're really getting a lot for your money when you buy something like this. Now we have a square set and we also have a rectangle set. And we use these Orange Pop rulers to square up everything Kimberbell. All of our bench pillows, quilts, you name it, we use Orange Pop rulers. They can be used for things beyond Kimberbell too. So don't think just Kimberbell. This can be used for fussy cutting, denim and t-shirt quilts. It can be used for all kinds of other pieced blocks, you name it. So it's really a great tool to have in your toolbox, so to speak. All right, now I want to square this up to 4.5 by 4.5-inch size. So I'm going to give you a few tips on using the Orange Pop rulers because I know that once you learn how to use them and once you know like the tips for using them, it makes it so simple to do. All right. So I'm going to take these off of this rotating mat. I think one of the key things to being successful with these is that you actually have a rotating mat. All right. So I'm going to use this one here. That way I don't have to shift the fabric. I'm just shifting my mat when I go to cut. Like I said, I'm going to use I need this to be squared up to 4.5 by 4.5-inch size. And I can place it so that Orange Pop ruler frames my design. The nice thing about this is that I can visually see where I'm about to cut before I even cut it. That way I'm not going to accidentally cut maybe over here or over here unless I wanted to. But if I want that smack square in the middle, I know that I can take this ruler and if I cut it down to this size, it's going to be the perfect size block to fit into my quilt or in this case, the pillow. All right. So like I said, 1 rotating mat, 2 45 millimeter rotary cutter is I feel like is one of the best you can have. You could also go smaller than that. I would not go larger than that. Okay. And the idea is that you place your blade into these extended corner channels and then you cut right up against the inside of the ruler. If you are a right-handed person like I am, then you will cut starting to the left. If you are a left-handed person, you're going to cut inside just starting to the right. Okay, so just think a little bit opposite there. All right, so I've got that in place, and I know exactly visually where I want to cut it before I actually take a blade to it. Now, another tip I'd give you, especially since you have this smaller size block, why not use these other sizes of Orange Pop rulers to your advantage by just nesting one on top of the other. By doing that, that gives my hand more of a surface area to hold on to so that when I go to rotate this, I just have more space for my hand to hold on to. Well, if that's the case, then I could even take the largest size and nest it. And look at that. Now I have even more surface area for my hand to hold on to. So that's another tip. Now, let's say, for example, I want to have this block, say it was really big piece of fabric here, and I wanted to have that block be an 8.5 by 8.5 inch size or a 10.5 by 10.5 inch size. What I could do is actually start with all 3 of these rulers and then one at a time. Again, if this fabric was really big, I could then eliminate the smaller block. I could even eliminate this block. And again, if this fabric was out to here, I still have this nice and square and centered because I did it just one Orange Pop ruler at a time. Kind of cool. And then I would cut that. All right, so we're not going to cut that size. We want to cut the 4.5 by 4.5 inch size. So I'm going to place those all back, nestle them right into each other. And then the other thing I like to recommend is standing up so that you have a little more pressure on your blade. Okay, so again, because I'm a right-handed person, I'm going to start to the left. If I was a lefty, I would start to the right. All right, watch how easy this is. Again, I'm putting my blade just into that extended corner channel right here, and I'm just running it up along that inside edge. Now I can turn this, place my hand on here, and cut. Turn again, cut, and turn once more, and cut. All right, now that you've done that, look at that. You have the perfect size 4.5 by 4.5 inch square that's going to fit in right there. Isn't that great? All right, so that's a little tutorial on how orange pop rulers work. I know a lot of you have them already. If you do, we'd love to hear about your experience. If you're having any trouble with them, if you're like, I'm not so sure this ruler is for me, let us help you. We've got lots of tutorials online. Go to YouTube, type in orange pop rulers. You're going to find so many tutorials where I walk you through some extra steps, some tricks, some tips, anything to help you get this right. Because when you do, you're going to be amazed at the difference it makes in your quilting and making sure everything fits just perfectly when you go to put all those blocks together. All right, so that aside, check. We've got off our first objective done today, and that was to show you how to square up these blocks. Now, the next thing I want to talk about is how to piece this block. Now, I've already made one so that you could see what I did here. And now I'm going to show you on the machine how to make this as well. All right? Because we're going to use a combination of two things. We're actually going to piece one strip in the hoop and a second strip in the hoop, and they're both going to be pieced in the same 5x7 hoop. But there is a point where you're going to cut it out and sew the two sides together. Let me show you how easy this is. All right, so where we're looking at, let's turn in your directions. If you have, I like to print out my instructions and put them in a 3-ring binder. And if you are following along with your instructions, I want you to turn to page 24. 24, whatever. If it's different for you, then just look for a double pinwheel block, okay? That's where we're at, the double pinwheel block. And you'll notice at the top where it says block by block quilting, which we are going to do, it says to actually piece the whole design together first, and then it says to follow technique 2 for quilting it in the hoop. Okay, this is a little different than what we did on Monday because you need to piece this together first in its two different sections, then sew it on the machine because the embroidery machine, it's not going to do this whole thing by itself just on the embroidery machine. You do have to do one seam, just one seam only on your sewing machine. But then you've got to quilt it. And how do you quilt it? Well, I'm going to show you how easy it is with technique 2 that is outlined there in your instructions. Okay, so let's go ahead and just start piecing this block just like normal, as if we were just going by what's in the book. And then I'll show you how to quilt it. The first thing I did was I hooped some light cutaway stabilizer, some light mesh cutaway stabilizer. Kimberbell has a light cutaway mesh stabilizer, and we also have an ultra light cutaway mesh stabilizer. So either one of those are going to be just great, okay, for this. So I've already hooped that, and now I need to find the design on my machine. So let's hold on just a minute here. Yeah, here we go. Okay, Andrew, can you get an up close of this? No, or maybe we'll just show you in the book. We don't have this camera over here, right?
I can move it.
Okay, that's okay. We can do it this way. What would be the best way to get this picture right here? Perfect. Okay, so I pulled up this design on my machine. Do you see how it's in two different sections? It has to be that way because of how your embroidery machine works with this type of stuff. So you're going to sew together all the pieces of block 1, which actually is like this right here, and then block 2, which is this up here. So we're first going to hoop our stabilizer, which we've done, and we've loaded the design into our machine, which looks like this. And now we're going to stitch out the piecing template for the block 1 directly on top of our stabilizer. Okay, so if you've been following along, you might be thinking, wait a minute, I thought we're supposed to put batting down first. Well, in this case, let's see, embroidery, got to set it. Okay. In this case, because we have to eventually take this block to do one seam at the sewing machine, you don't put your batting down yet. That will come later when we do what we call technique 2 that I'm going to show you today. Okay, so in the meantime, this is just going to stitch the outline of block 1. All right, and as that's stitching out, I'm going to see if there are any questions I can help answer. People are loving the orange pop rulers. Chris says, love, love, love my orange pop rulers. Couldn't do without. Thank you, Chris. I'm glad that you find them so useful. Christy says, I love my orange pop rulers. When I plan a quilt, I always make sure my OPR, which we call orange pop rulers, has a size that I can use to square up my square. That's awesome. Okay. Cheryl says, I have both sets and use them all the time. Connie says, well worth the investment. Thank you for all that feedback. It really does help because that's more than me just saying they're fantastic, which I absolutely believe in. We want to hear from you how you like them as well. All right, so that has stitched out the block 1 piecing template. I've already pre-cut my fabrics as outlined in your instructions. And this is what it looks like. Kind of looks funny right now, right? Doesn't look like much is happening, but just you wait. It's pretty cool what you're going to see happen here. If you will look at your instructions at the bottom of page 24, there is a graphic there. Let me show you what it looks like in my book here. Right here. Notice this graphic? It's numbered because those numbers correspond with the pieces of fabric we're using. And I want you to notice that there's a grayed out section 1. If you've never done any of Kimber Bell machine embroider by number projects or quilting projects, then this is going to be new to you. But basically, because that area is grayed out and it says 1, that means piece 1 needs to cover that area. So in this case, it's going to be right here. This is section 1. Okay. Again, just as outlined in your instructions. It says that I'm now going to take my piece 1 of fabric, which is right here, and with the right side facing up, I'm going to place it to cover that entire section 1. Okay, so when I do that, I always like to take a little piece of tape here and also tape it in place just so that it doesn't move when I go to embroider. Okay, so I'm going to tape this down like so and then take it to the machine. All right. All right, so I've covered section 1. It's going to be an oversized piece of fabric, so that's great because you'll cut it down to size a little bit later. Now I place it back onto the machine, and it's going to do another, what we would call a trimming and placement line. If you also have questions while I'm stitching something, we've got our ladies Brielle and Libby here to also help answer as I go and to let me know if there's something I need to answer live for sure. So just chat away. We'd love to help you out. All right. Now that I've done that, do you see this stitch line right here? Looks kind of funky. I want to cut off any of the extra fabric that is going beyond that stitch line. So I'm just going to use my applique scissors to cut right along that area. Easy enough. It's all cut. So, there we go. Now, so I've cut up the extra fabric right up against the stitch line. So let's take a look at instruction step 5 on the next page. It shows me another grayed out area, which is piece number 2. That is what this is right here. Okay. This is piece 2 as shown in the diagram. So I'm going to take my green striped fabric, and this time instead of the fabric facing up, I'm going to place the fabric facing down, because as you can imagine, think about this. When you sew 2 pieces of fabric together, you always want right sides facing, right? So that's why we now have that facing down, and it's going to do the next stitch, which will be a perfect 1/4 inch right down along this area. Again, you could tape it in place, or if you feel like the sizes are large enough and you're okay without it, certainly you could do it that way as well. All right. So now I've got this stitch line going from here to here. And I want to flip this over and make sure it's nice and pressed. But the issue comes with, well, we want it to stay down. We want it to stay flat, right? So what we would suggest is that you take it to, an ironing station and give it just a gentle pressing with an iron. Or you can do something like I like to use, and that is with a fabric folding pin. This is a tool by Clover that we just absolutely love here at Kimberbell. Can't say enough about it, because what it does, it has a little starch solution in that tube, and so I can run that pin right along. Looks like I might need to refill it. Do I have another one? Oh, I've got another one. Of course, there's never a lack of these around here because we love them. Okay, this one is filled up. So I'm going to run that pin. Oh, that's much better. Right along that seam line. And then I can flip it over and give it a gentle finger press. Okay, so I'm going to do that actually on a flat surface here so I don't pop this out of the hoop. You could even take one of these rollers and just run it across that seam line to make it flat. Or like I said, just finger press it. All right. Okay, so now that's done. Let's take a look at instruction step 8, where it's going to do another trimming and placement line right across here. Let's go ahead and take a look at what that looks like. All right. Okay, so now we have this line going across here, and you have this extra fabric that is extended beyond the line. That's what we want to trim up. So I'm going to do that really fast here by just trimming up right next to the line. Right here. Okay, let's take a look at piece 3. This again is in the middle of page 25. We're now looking at one of our blue pieces. So right sides together, we are just going to center it along this line that was just stitched. Just right smack in the middle of that line, okay, from edge to edge. Meaning, if this line stops here, I don't want to line this up. I don't want to line my fabric with where it stopped. If this line starts here, I don't want to line up my fabric where it started. I want to center this fabric along that line. Okay, so that it's about equal on both sides. Now it's going to stitch the next step, which is a 1/4 inch down this way. All right. So now that we have that seam stitch, can we get closer on that? Andrew to the rescue. I'm looking at this going, oh, let's get a little closer. Shall we? Oh, that's nice. Thank you, Andrew. Okay, so you see this seam line right here. Again, you could do a variety of things. You could take an iron to it. You could use this water pen. You could use a roller. Any of the above. Okay. All right. So right now you're thinking, that doesn't look quite like a pinwheel, Kim. Oh, trust the process, my friends. Trust the process, because we're about to do the next step, which is a trimming and placement line for our next piece of fabric. It's like magic. It's so fun to watch this come together, because as you're going through it, like, that doesn't look quite right. But in the end, it all works perfectly. Okay, so I've now stitched this line. What am I going to do? I'm going to trim it up. I want to trim up this extra stuff. So let's do it. All right, easy enough. What's the next step? Well, let's turn the page to page 26, and it says we're using a yellow piece of fabric for piece 4, which is this area right here. That means we're going to place the right side of the fabric facing down, centered along that line that was just stitched, and place it back onto our machine to do the 1/4 inch. Kathy, that's a good question. Does it matter? Let's see. Does it matter if it's with the grain or on the bias? The good news, Kathy, is it does not matter. You are going to be just fine either way. All right. Now we've got this seam line. We're going to use our pin and press. Now, you don't have to remove this from your machine every single step. If you can reach those areas while it's still on the bed of your machine, go for it. But I'm showing you up to this point how to do it over here, just so that you can see it better. This next one, I think I'm going to do it while it's still on the machine. Let's see what happens. All right, so it's stitched out a line right here. Right across here. I want to get rid of all this extra. So while it's still on the machine, I'm just going to cut it. And again, while it's still on the machine, I will use the next piece of fabric to place right side facing down, centered along that line that we just stitched. And now I'll do the 1/4 inch. And since it's still on the machine, I can just take my little water pen to it, or we call it the fabric folding pen, and then just finger press. See, so you don't have to take it off every single time, for sure. Cindy, she says the yellow fabric is very pretty. Thank you, Cindy. That is a Kimberbell fabric. All of these fabrics that we're using today are part of the Kimberbell fabric line. This is the Kimberbell Basics collection, and you can find them all in quilt shops. All right, so there we have it. Now we've got one more line, and now we're going to cut off the extra. You know the drill, right? You're like, yeah, I got this, Kim. you cut it, you place your next piece of fabric down, right sides together, and there you go. All right, done. Now I'm ready for my final piece in this section of the block, and that is right sides together. Just going to stitch a 1/4 inch, and then we'll be done with this section. All right, while it's still in the machine, I'm just going to run this along that seam line and flip it over and press. And the next step is to do a rectangle tack down line. This is going to keep this entire block flat, and it's going to show us where to cut when it's time to cut and piece these two sides of the block together. Yes.
Would pre-cut triangles work for this, or do you need to have the extra fabric?
Oh, that is a good question. She said, will pre-cut triangles work? You know, of course, it depends on the size of the triangle. The hardest part about that is that you've got to like think, well, how is this going to flip and where is it going to land once it's flipped? If it covers the area that you're trying to cover, then absolutely. We just feel like it's much easier to be like, okay, we're going to give you a little bit oversized piece, flip it, and then trim it down. But certainly if it was the right size triangle and you tried it and once it flipped, it covered, then you should be okay. All right, so now we've got the rectangle around here. Okay, as you can see here. This rectangle eventually becomes this rectangle. But now we need to do the top side of this pinwheel, double pinwheel. So what we're going to do is it's actually going to now stitch out what we just did up here. So it's nice because, oh, excuse me, we can utilize our entire piece of stabilizer and not have any waste, right? So because I don't want this area to get in the middle or in the way of here, I'm just going to trim it up just a little bit. 1/2 inch is just fine. Just so that, and this is fine to have this extra because we'll be cutting it down to this size in just a minute. All right. So now you will go through the same steps that I just showed you. If you are looking at page 27, step 30, you'll notice that's where, let's go to the overhead. That is, here's where we're at now. Move all this stuff. This is where we're at. We're ready to do the second part of this block, okay? It's going to do exactly the same thing. So I'm not going to show it to you live because it literally does exactly what we just did here, but now up here, all right? Now, once you have that done, then as you'll see, let's skip ahead in the instructions. Let's see, let's turn to page 30, and it says that you're going to have the same rectangle trimming area, right? Trimming lines. You then take this all out of the hoop, and I'm just going to do it right now because I already have a block. I'm not going to finish this one, but I want to show you that once both sections were done, you would then cut directly on these lines. Okay, I'm gonna, let's see, let me get some bigger scissors. I would probably do it with a rotary cutter just because I like how precise and straight a rotary cutter can be, but if you can follow lines, then with scissors, more power to you, right? Okay, so I'm just trimming that up. Again, you would have 2 of these blocks to trim up at this point. Okay, just like that. And then as you see on page 30, step 60 in the instructions, you would sew the two sides together. So this is at the point where you would have to take it to a sewing machine and just sew one seam stitch across it. All right. So I've done that already with this block. See how this was? This was there. Then there's another one. You sew them together with one seam. Boom, you're done. You sew it with 1/4 inch. Okay, so there you have it. That is your double pinwheel block. Now, at this point, that's when you're thinking, okay, now how do I quilt this though? I got you covered. What I want you to do, let's look at, I think it's page 4 in your instructions, okay? It is the page that looks like this. And it has the diagram of what background quilting we used for the different parts of the block. It's all numbered, and then we put the numbers down here so that you know what we used. Of course, you could use any of our background quilting designs, but we really like the idea of, you know, having some kind of formula to follow if you'd like. Okay, so I'm going to look at this double pinwheel block. It says number 10. So I'm going to go down here, and number 10 says that I used the, it says KDQ 082 St. Patrick's 4. All right. So I'm going to pull that up. Again, this is a separate download at kimberbell.com if you would like to use background quilting. If you have clear blue tiles, a lot of people have asked this. This is my clear blue tiles USB, and you can add files to it. So anything that you download, you can always add to this USB and have all the quilting designs that you would want to use with clear blue tiles. I also like to save it on my computer, because what if something were to happen to this, right? And the nice thing is, when you are logged into kimberbell.com and you actually make any of our download purchases, they will always remain in your library. So that's really nice too. All right, so I'm going to find real quick here. What did I do here? Number 82. Are there any questions I can help answer while I'm finding this?
Yes.
Okay, Libby?
There's one from Carol. She says, it looks like you are butting the new fabric up to the line, not
Yes.
over it.
Yes. Correct? Carol, that's a great question. Can everyone hear Libby too? Or do I need to repeat the question? Can people hear what Libby asked?
Go ahead and repeat it.
Okay, so Libby asked, or Carol asked, if she needs to butt up the fabric right against the line, or does she go over it? Carol or Carol Ann? Carol. Just right up to the line. It's so easy. You're going to love this method. Just right up to the line, line it up. Nothing has to be over, because then the machine moves back to give you that perfect 1/4 inch. It's awesome. You're going to love it, Carol. Okay, so this design, this particular design, it's shamrocks, and you're going to find 2 different methods for using these shamrocks on your machine. You're going to find a clear blue tiles folder, and you're going to find a block by block folder. Okay, clear blue tiles is a different method. We're not going to talk about that quite yet. What I want you to do is click on the block by block folder, because we don't want the batting in our seams when we go to sew all of these pieces together. That's when you would use block by block. So I'm clicking on block by block. Then this particular machine is PES, has all of there's like 9 different formats on there. And then I'm going to find my 4x4 block design. Okay. Now, when you download any of our background quilting designs at kimberbell.com, included in that download will also be step-by-step instructions for how to use this with our clear blue tiles method. All right, so that's what I've done here. Let me pull it out. And you'll remember it said use quilting technique 2. That's what I'm looking for here. So here are the instructions. This is St. Patrick's 4. It gives you a little thumbnail of what that design looks like. You're going to see all the different files that are included on that download, all the different sizes. I am looking for technique 2. Okay. Second page in, or third page in. You're going to look for, it says technique 2, border blocks and traditional piece blocks. This means that if you have, you would use technique 1 if you have an oversized piece of fabric, you're doing your background quilting, you're adding your applique, and then you cut it down to size. That's technique 1 for block by block. Technique 2 for block by block is that you have either like a border piece or what we might call filler blocks, or a piece block like this that goes in the middle of all those other blocks, right? You have to use technique number 2 because this is already at the exact size you need in the end. It's not oversized. Oversized is technique 1. An actual block to the size is technique 2. That's why we're going to skip to technique 2. All right? Hopefully that makes sense. Now, I want you to look at page 3 in that download of instructions because there is a chart there. And if I'm wondering, well, how big do I cut my batting? Or what size do I use? Well, I know that this block, it said I needed to use 4x4, right? So the file name is 4x4. And I go over here, it says the cut size is 4.5 by 4.5. Yep. If I were to measure this right now, this is a 4.5 by 4.5 inch block because once it's sewn into the seams, it's going to be 4x4, right? So then I look at the column next to it and it says batting size. I know that I need to cut a piece of batting that's 5x5. All right, so I've done it. I've got my 4.5 by 4.5 inch block, and somewhere on this crazy table, I have a 5x5 size of batting. You guys, this is a story of my life. Andrew's pointing over here. Nope, it's not that. I know it's here. I remember seeing it, and just like that, it disappears. Can you believe this? All right. Brielle, remember sweet Brielle that helps me oh, I found it. found it. Brielle, it's because I called your name. Exactly. And then all of a sudden, boom, it appears. Here's my 5x5 inch block. Or my, not my block, it's not my, well, it is kind of a block. It's the project batting, okay? It's my I've got my 4.5 by 4.5 inch block. I got my 5x5 inch project batting. All right. You guys are so patient with me. I'm going to hoop the stabilizer just as outlined in the download. Okay, let's see where the instructions are, shall we? And then I'll show you how easy it is to do on the machine. You know, you have to look at the instructions. Boom. Technique 2. Go to the top where it says technique 2. Don't go to technique 1. Go to technique 2. All right. Now, it says to fuse what we would recommend is to fuse our fusible backing on the back of this. So I did that. It's not like you have to do this. It's a nice to do kind of thing because it definitely helps prevent puckering. And because my other blocks, I fused fusible backing onto it, I wanted them all to feel the same. So that's why I did it on here. Okay, so optional, definitely optional, but it does reduce puckering. And in this case, it also helps all of the blocks have the same feel to them. All right, so I've done that. And then it says to hoop your light mesh cutaway, or you could use ultralight mesh cutaway. All right, place that onto my machine. Let's look at, and this again is in your download for the background quilting. I'm going to stitch my first step, which is the batting placement line, and I am doing that directly on the stabilizer. Okay, so we've stitched out that outline. I take my 5x5 piece of project batting and I place it just right over the top. Okay, now it's going to stitch the tack down line. Now, if you cut this at 5.5 by 5.5 of project batting, 6 by 6, it doesn't matter. The point is that you just want your project batting to be larger than that square that just stitched out because you're cutting it down to size anyway. So we give you a guideline in the chart, but just know that it just needs to be a little bit bigger so that the stitches have something to grab onto and you can cut off the rest. Okay, so it is now doing a double stitch line around that batting, and then we will trim away the extra. This is looking like what we did on Monday, but you're going to see here in just a few minutes how it's different when you use technique number 2. All right. All right, now the next step is I'm going to place it back onto the machine and it's going to do what we call the fabric placement line. That is a 1/4 inch, well, it's a box that goes out, extends beyond this area about a 1/4 inch on all sides. Let's take a look at what that is like. Dee says, I quilted the 3 4-patch blocks and the pinwheel block all in a 9.5 by 9.5 inch hoop using one big piece of batting. That's a great idea, Dee. You know, if you can utilize, if you've got larger hoops and you can utilize those to your advantage so that you don't have to use, you know, as much stabilizer and such, and it saves time, that's always a good thing for sure. Thanks for sharing that, Dee. Okay, so as I mentioned, there's going to be a 1/4 inch box around all 4 sides. And now that box is actually showing us exactly where to place this pinwheel. Okay, but we don't want it to shift because this literally is the exact size of that box. Okay, and we don't want, when this goes to do the quilting, we don't want the presser foot to accidentally catch it and lift up your fabric block, right? So what we're going to do at this point is outlined in direction step 2B on page 5 of that download. Okay, and we are going to just tape all 4 edges. Okay, I would just tape it barely inside that edge. Okay, now paper tape is just awesome because it will tear away easily from your project and it's not going to leave it gummy. It's going to go, your needle's going to be just fine around it. And if you tape it close to the edge, then your background quilting probably you won't even stitch over it because this will all be sewn into the seam. All right. So again, you want to tape on, when you're doing technique 2, you want to tape all 4 sides just so that the needle doesn't lift that up, and then you got a ruined project. All right. Okay. So now I can do my background quilting. Now, I think what I'm going to do, let's change threads. I had gray in there, but I think I had a really dark gray. Let's go with more of a cream, I think. Yeah, let's do a cream. Just because I want my quilting to blend more in with my block and not stand out too much. Okay. Personal preference for sure. You can use whatever thread color you would like, of course. All right. So let's quickly put that together. Oops. Okay. Now I'm ready to stitch the quilting. It's this fun clover patch design. Oh, actually, what you could do, this doesn't matter at this point. The next step, I'm looking at direction step 2C, would actually be to stitch down the fabric itself, but because you already have the tape in place, you can skip it. So it shows that in your instructions, we're at 2C, it says you can skip step 4 if you've taped around all 4 edges, okay? That step is in there because if you use technique 1 where it was larger, that's why you would use step 4, okay? So we're gonna skip it because we don't need it. We already taped it. I'm going to the final stitches of the clover. All right, now we're in business. All right. What other questions can I help answer? Nancy says, do you prefer glide over hemming or threads? You know, I'm not going to give you an easy answer on that, right? Because I like them all. How's that? It's really tough to say. I love glide. I love Hemingworth. I love Madeira. I love Floriani. I love, I'm just trying to think off the top of my head. There's so many different ones out there. And what you have to do is truly find the thread that works best with your machine. I feel like all machines handle different brands of threads, maybe a little bit different. And so that's not an easy thing to answer for sure. I'm sure that was not very helpful, but that truly is how I feel. It really depends on the brand of your machine and what thread works best with it. You know, if you are buying thread from a shop who carries certain brands of machines, those the shop owner can certainly give you a really good idea that, you know, they're not going to bring anything in that wouldn't work well with the machine that they sell. So check out those shops and what they sell, and then that's the one I would recommend. Okay. Yeah, Marcia says whatever works best with your machine. It's all so different. It is. I know that we in our Kimberbell product development lab, we have all the different brands of threads and we have all the different brands of machines, and they just all work maybe a little bit different. Some are happier with some than others. So there you go. You guys, that's it. That's it. I'm done. So simple, right? It's quilted. It's in the hoop. I don't have to do anything else to it. It's awesome. Look at that. Isn't that pretty? I know it's hard to tell on the picture, but if you could see the texture that quilting gives that block, it's just phenomenal. It fits perfectly within that size because everything is digitized to work perfectly for the squares and the appliques and the block sizes that we use here at Kimberbell so often. It's just awesome stuff. So now I would just pop this out of my hoop and cut it. That's it. All right. Cut around. so that you still have your quarter or your 4.5 by 4.5 inch block. And you could remove, if there's a little bit of tape on there, which there will be, you could certainly remove that. But if you taped it, you know, pretty close to the edge, that would just be sewn into your seam. So I wouldn't worry too much about it. I'm going to peel it off. Okay. And as you can see, it just peels right off. No big deal. There you go. Done. This is ready to be pieced into this entire top. Love it. All right. So any questions before I go on the clear blue tiles? Because I wanted to cover those two things, the cutting with the orange pop rulers and the piecing, before I go into clear blue tiles for those who have smaller hoops. Because what I'm about to share with you doesn't really apply to those with larger hoops. So whether it's helpful to you or not, you certainly are welcome to stay on. I'd love to see you on, but I realize that, you know, if you've got to go and you're like, well, I've got a big hoop, I'm okay, then, you know, now's the time that you might want to be like, yeah, signing off, Kim. But if you want to stay, just because it's so much fun, then grab a cup of coffee and let's do background quilting on blocks that you feel like, no, I can't do it because I have a small hoop. Oh, no. Yes, you can. Yes, you can. Because I'm going to show you how easy that is. All right. So before some people sign off, maybe there's others that want me to answer some questions before we go on to the final thing. I will say that your homework, I saw someone earlier post said, I'm all caught up on my homework. I loved it. Okay. What I want you to do is you're going to also do this rainbow block, because this is also a pieced block. Let's see if we can get up close on that one. This is a pieced block. So just like you did the other pieced block here, you're going to do something very similar with this rainbow. All right. But I want you to notice one thing. The outer applique final stitch, satin stitch, is blue all the way across so that it blends in with your background. All right. So it doesn't change from yellow to orange to red final stitches. You're going to piece all that together like kind of like an applique, and then it's going to finish it off on the edges with that blue satin stitch. All right. So I want you to do that. I want you to, if you haven't done this block that we talked about briefly on Monday, go ahead and do that one as well. And then sew those two blocks together according to the instructions. All right. The other thing that would be really easy to do today would be just the Lucky Us blocks. There is nothing to this except do your background quilting first, as I showed on Monday, and then you just do your stitching on top. I love this, how our digitizers did this, because they did this fun satin stitch for Lucky, and then Lucky Us, and then they did a top stitch right through the middle in a different color, in a contrasting color, which just gives those letters maybe just a little extra pop, a little extra wow. Isn't that cool? So go ahead and do that. And then, of course, if you haven't done any of the other blocks yet, if you haven't done this one yet, we're going to do it today in just a minute so that I can show you how to do background quilting. And yeah, and then your other pieced blocks too. Okay. So then on Friday, we're going to finish it all up. We're going to bring it all together, and I will show you how to do this fun rainbow border all the way across on all four sides, and the outer flange border, which let's take a closer look at that flange. Don't you love that digitizing? It all works so beautifully with this pillow. Just darling stuff. Okay, all coordinates, which I love. All right. Any quick questions before I move on to the part about clear blue tiles? Yes.
Okay, here's a question from Carol.
Okay.
Can Presto be used as fusible?
Presto. Carol, I hate to say I'm not sure what Presto is. Give me some more context for that. I have not heard of that product. So I really can't answer that. Maybe someone else out there knows what she's talking about and can help answer that. That would be awesome. And now I'm going to look up what that is a little bit later. Okay. Hopefully it can, if that's what you've got. Any other questions?
Here's another one.
Okay.
Kat Martinez is wondering, what size hoop are you using to piece the hat?
Kat, I am so glad you asked that. And you know, it's funny, you start to recognize names that come up on there. And I think I saw you mention earlier that you don't have a larger hoop. And so you were going to do the 5x7. And I thought, oh, good. I'm so glad you're with us today, Kat, because I'm going to show you with a 5x7 that you can do that hat block. If you have a larger hoop, you'll do it just in one hooping. But if you don't, it sounds like you have a 5x7, Kat. That's awesome. You can still do it with a 5x7. But what you're going to want to do, see if I can find my papers here. We do have a separate PDF of instructions. I might have left those at home. We do have a separate PDF of instructions on how to do that as a double hooping, okay, for that particular hat. We want you to be able to do it if possible. And so our digitizers split it into two hoopings, and that extra PDF on the download, make sure and take a look at it, because it will show you how to do this quilting or this design with a 5x7. Okay. Hopefully that helps, Kat. Yes, Kathy says, will you talk about the background quilting on the hat block? Yes, that's what I'm just about to do. But I wanted to let you know that if you have a large hoop, like a 9.5 by 9.5 or a 9x14 hoop, you can do the background quilting on this, no problem. That just as directed in the instructions. It uses an 8x8 background quilting file, okay? But if you're there and you're sitting at home and you're thinking, but I don't have that large of hoop, how am I possibly going to do the background quilting? I'm going to show you how to do that right now with a smaller hoop. All right? Okay, are you ready? Are we ready, guys? Brielle, Libby, what do you think? Should we move ahead?
Yes.
All right, here we go. This is so fun. This is actually one of my favorite things to teach, is all the different ways you can use clear blue tiles, because this technique I'm about to show you is just like a little inkling. It's just a little something, a little taste of what the power of clear blue tiles really is. I know that sounds dramatic, but it's true. Okay, so clear blue tiles. You're going, okay, what's clear blue tiles? Right here. Let me pull it up. This, my friends, is clear blue tiles. And this is the complete system for doing background quilting on your home embroidery machine. And you don't have to do any math, and you don't have to do any measuring, and you don't have to line things up perfectly. With this system, it works for quilts, pillows, table toppers, table runners, wall hangings, you name it. Okay, but you can also use this system when doing something like this that I'm about to show you. You don't have a large enough hoop for the project, so you've got to use a smaller hoop to do the background quilting. You're going to use clear blue tiles to help you with that. All right, so let me make this really easy for you. That background block, this one right here, calls for a 10.5 by 10.5 inch piece of fabric. All right, so I've cut that out. You can iron the fusible backing to the back of it, okay? So here I have my 10.5 by 10.5 inch size. What I'm about to show you with clear blue tiles is not your typical way to use clear blue tiles, although it is outlined in the instructions in here. You can use this technique for smaller items that don't fit in your hoop, okay? But normally you would not need to do what all these things I'm about to show you, except in this case, You're going to follow me along here. This is a piece of project batting. You just want to make sure that it is larger than your background fabric. So because I cut this at 10.5 by 10.5, I cut this one at 12.5 by 12.5 so that I had an extra inch on all 4 sides. Okay, so let's go ahead and go to the overhead camera. With the right side facing up, I'm just going to center that background fabric on top of the batting. All right. Let me get rid of all this extra clutter here so you can just see this. All right, here we go. So the next thing I'm going to do is I want to tape down all 4 sides because I don't want this to lift up. Actually, before I even do that, I want to baste the layers together. This is what you would do like when you do a quilt sandwich. If you had the top of your quilt and you had batting in the middle, and then you had another piece of fabric to become your backing of your quilt, you always want to, what we would call baste, a quilt sandwich together. So to do that quickly and easily, I'm just going to use a basting spray. Okay, there's lots of different methods for doing this. You can use safety pins, although I don't recommend safety pins just because I might be one of those people that forget that a safety pin is in there and I don't want my machine to run across it, right? That would not be fun. So I just use a quick basting spray. You can also use basting powders that are out there that you iron, but that keeps all the layers together. In this case, we are only working with a top fabric and the batting. All right. We don't need to worry about the backing because it's going to be in a pillow. So now I will tape all 4 edges down just right along the outside perimeter because I don't want the fabric to lift up. If my machine were to go over to the edge, I don't want to risk the chance of that pulling up the fabric and creating havoc, right? Nobody's got time for that. So we just simply tape this down on all 4 sides. All right. One thing I want you to do, I've got my background fabric, I've got my batting. How do I know what size I need to use for background quilting? Well, let's take a look. Let's look at page 4, I think. Yep. Okay, right here, I'm looking at doing the background quilting on this particular block. It's labeled as number 8. So I'm going to go down here to number 8. And it says I need to use an 8 by 8 inch size of background quilting. Well, that's not going to work for me, right? Because it's just not. I don't have a hoop in this case big enough to do that. So instead, I'm going to use clear blue tiles to help me get that 8 by 8 quilting. So here's what I want you to do. If you've got clear blue tiles, I want you to pull out the tile that does say 8 by 8. Okay, I know you're not going to use it. You're like, wait, Kim, I don't have the 8 by 8. Stay with me here. I still want you to pull it out, okay? Because that is the area we want to cover. It says it right there, 8 by 8 inch, okay? That's because I know that an area of my quilt needs to be completed with an 8 by 8 type of quilting. So I'm going to place that directly on top of my fabric. Okay, let's go ahead and go to the overhead. What this is doing is that this is saying, hey, Kim, this is the area you want to quilt. It's an 8 by 8 inch size, right? So I'm just going to try to just eyeball it in the middle. Again, these are oversized pieces of fabric. You're going to be fine to just eyeball it. I'm going to center this even though I'm not using it. okay? Because it tells me this is the area that needs to be covered in quilting. Does that make sense? So I'm going to actually just mark with a water-soluble pen here all of these corners. You'll notice, let's see if we can get a close-up of this, Andrew. Do you notice on the clear blue tiles, there's this little ticking mark, this blue mark here, and then there's one over here, and they're on each corner on each side. I'm just going to, for my reference, going to mark these really quick because I'm not going to mark anything else. Usually we would mark center crosshairs. We're not going to do that yet because we're not using the 8 by 8 inch tile. We're using it just to know what area we're quilting. Okay. Now, please don't do this on your quilt, but I'm going to do it because I want you to show, you to see, I'm connecting the lines, so to speak. Don't do this. There's no need to do this. But I want you to see on the video that this is the area I'm covering. Again, this is the 8 by 8 inch size that it called for on the directions, but I don't have an 8 by 8 hoop. Here's the beauty of clear blue tiles, my friends. Are you ready to be blown away? I have other sizes of tiles that working together will cover this whole 8 by 8 inch area. Are you with me? Look at this. I could take, okay, so you have a 5 by 7 hoop. Guess what? A 4 by 4 tile, let's look really closely at that. Whoop. A 4 by 4 tile fits inside a 5 by 7 hoop, right? Okay. I'm just bringing up a couple of examples. I have a 2 by 4 tile. The 2 by 4 would also fit in a 5 by 7 hoop. I have a 4 by 6 tile. A 4 by 6 tile fits in a 5 by 7 hoop. By having all of this variety of tiles to work with that fit in a 5 by 7 hoop, you can make sure, let's go to overhead. You can make sure that this entire area is marked and covered so that when you go to hoop it or go to do the quilting, it will work. And it will all work like you never knew you didn't have a large enough hoop, because the way this is digitized at Kimberbell is that all of these designs are to the same scale. You know what that means? That means that no matter if I use a 4 by 4 tile, a 2 by 4, a 4 by 6, or heck, even an 8 by 8, it's all going to look the same size. And you won't be able to tell where one design started and one design ended. Let me show you how I mark this. This is just one example. I've got a 4 by 4 tile. I need to cover an 8 by 8 inch space. What does that mean? Look at that. I could put a 4 by 4 tile there. I could do it here. I could do it here. I could do it here. With 4 hoopings, I can cover this entire area of 8 by 8. Does that make sense? Okay. When I go to my machine, what I'm going to pull up is the file name that is also named 4 by 4, because it will quilt exactly where I place this tile. I'm going to mark it here in just a minute. Let me show you another example. Say I want to use the 4 by 6 tile. Well, I could. This is 4 by 6, right? But what do I do about this space? Because I still have to cover this whole area, right? Well, look, I've got a 2 by 4 tile. Boom, it's like a puzzle. If it fits there, it's going to quilt there, right? And so then I can move this over here, quilt that area, and then move this over here, And now again, with 4 different hoopings, I can quilt this whole area that once could only be quilted if you only had a large size hoop. All right. There's 3. Let's go ahead and go to the front. I'm going to mark this here in just a minute. But basically, there's 3 steps I want you to think about with clear blue tiles. We even show it on the back, I believe. Yep, right here. You place it, you mark it, you quilt it. It really is that easy. Let's take a look at this picture here on the back of your cover. You place your tile design down. You then mark it with a water-soluble pen. And now you know how to hoop it. And you pull up that exact same file name that matches the tile name. File and tile's got to match, right? And boom, you quilt it. It really is that simple, okay? Now, if you're going, whew, let's see, I'm a little confused. Try it out. It works. It works every time. We have had hundreds of people just in the last couple months that have worked with clear blue tiles that are finding success with this. I have a ton of videos found at YouTube and on kimberbell.com on how to do this. We have a full color instruction book that's going to walk you through every single step of doing this. It's really, really fun and easy. And once you get the hang of it, you're like, oh my gosh, that was so easy. That was so fun. I want to quilt everything on my embroidery machine. For this case, I'm going to actually do my first option of using the 4x4. Okay. I could use any of these, but I'm going to use the 4x4. I said place it, mark it, quilt it. Well, I just placed my file down, right? And now I'm going to mark it. There's a series of markings you're going to do. And let's see if we can get even closer on this, Andrew. That you're going to do when you place this down. The other thing I want you to make sure and do is that as you mark these things, please don't press hard. The harder you press on your marker and into the fabric, most likely it's going to be a little more difficult to remove that pin. We have tested this pin on all fabrics, in all kinds of situations. But if you will just lightly mark it where I'm going to show you, it's going to come out easier. Okay. Sometimes it takes just a little bit of spray water. Sometimes it takes soaking it in water, but it will come out. Okay. Just test it out on a scrap piece of fabric too, if you'd like. What I want to do is I'm going to mark just a quick center point mark. Boom. Then do you see these crosshair lines that are open? I'm just going to quickly mark those. Notice at the top here, okay, there's an arrow. I want to mark the arrow as well, okay? Because the arrow always tells me where the top of my hoop is when I go to hoop this at the machine. The other thing I want to do is notice it says 4x4 right here. And then there's a window that says size. I'm going to say 4x4 really lightly in that window. Okay. That's because once I remove this from there, if I have a bunch of different sizes of tiles I've used, I might not remember which one I needed to use on my machine. So by having that little window open where I can say, oh, that was 4x4. It says it right there. I marked it right there. I can pull up the 4x4 design on my machine and know that it's the right size for that area. The other markings I want you to do and get in the habit of is where we started in the beginning. Remember these little corner marks and the side blue marks? This is going to help if I mark these just right along the edge. There's no cut opening for them like you have up here. It's just right along the edge. Then I'm going to know where to place my next tile because we don't have like 10, 20, 50 4x4 tiles, right? We don't need them. All we have to do is lift this up. And because I marked where it stopped on the edge, I can then go, whoop, place it next to it, And look, I've got to line this mark with this right up next to it. And now I can do the same thing. In fact, I could even notice the arrow that's right up here. It doesn't always have to stay there because it just depends on how you hoop it. I could actually shift this if I wanted to. Okay. And have the arrow go this way. What I'm trying to say is it doesn't matter which direction the arrow is going, it's still all going to work. As long as when you go to hoop this, your arrow, whatever way it's pointing, is also the top of your hoop. All right. So I'm going to mark this center. I'm going to quickly mark the arrow and the grids. And what am I going to do here? I've got to write 4 by 4 so that I remember when I get over to my machine to only use the 4 by 4 in that area. Now I'm going to show you that I'm doing 4 by 4, 4 by 4, 4 by 4, and 4 by 4. So do I really need to mark that? Well, just get in the habit, right? This comes into play more when you're using different sizes and you don't want to go to your machine and go, oh no, which tile or which file am I supposed to bring up? All right. All right. Let's go to the next area because I've also marked, oh, I forgot to do that. I've got to mark my corners. I don't really have to do this, but I will, again, out of habit up here, because really what I need to know is where to place my next tile down here, right? All right. I can lift this up. Everything's been marked. I can now place my tile in this area right here. Boom. Okay. Once again, I can move the arrow any way I want. If I want them to all stay up with the arrow at the top, I could do that. It just doesn't matter. Okay. This one, just for kicks and giggles, I'm going to put the arrow facing down, right? So what am I going to do? I'm going to mark my center. I'm going to mark my crosshairs. I'm going to mark my arrow. I'm going to write 4 by 4 upside down. And then I'm going to mark my sides because I need to know where one tile stopped and the next one needs to be placed. And because I've marked just this little tick mark, I can shift this over here and line it up right against that tick mark. Do you see what's happening here? This is, let's go ahead and go to the front camera before I mark this. This is what I like to say. If you've heard me say this a million times because you've watched all my videos with clear blue tiles, I apologize in advance. But it is it's an example that you can think about in your mind and go, okay, that makes sense. So I'm going to use this scenario again. You think about clear blue tiles as if it was a rubber stamp. Think about that. If you're making cards, greeting cards, right? Or scrapbooking, and you take a rubber stamp and you dip it in ink and then you place it on your scrapbook paper or your card or whatever it may be. Wherever that stamp is, wherever it lands, that's where your design goes, right? It just makes sense. It's a stamp. It goes right underneath it. The same thing applies for clear blue tiles. If you think of this as a rubber stamp, and I were to take this and dip it in ink over here, and then I've got to place it on my fabric so that wherever it lands, that's where my quilting goes. That's exactly the same thing that you're doing with clear blue tiles. It's awesome. So now if I think about it like in this idea of it being a stamp, I know that I could cover an entire quilt with clear blue tiles. Just, you know, I could cover individual blocks. I could do borders. I could do all these things because if that blue tile lands there, that's exactly where your quilting is also going to land. It makes sense. So let's go ahead and go back to my last marking. All right. I've done this one here and here. I know that I've got this space left to mark. So I'm going to place my clear blue tile right in that space. Voila, it fits. Hey, it could even go beyond this if you want. If you had just like a 4 by 6 tile, you could put that there for sure. it's going to go outside of your 8x8 area, but you end up cutting it off anyway. So it's just going to look like your quilting goes into the seam, which is what background quilting does. So you can use other sizes of blocks, but this one just happens to fit in there perfectly. So I'm going to use it. All right. Okay, think through this with me, guys. Dot in the center, crosshairs, real quick, light touch to your blue, blue fabric, blue pin. Okay, and then 4x4, 4x4. And then if I needed to, I would mark all the corners. I don't need to because that was my last marking. Okay, you can see that with this 8x8 inch area, you now have to hoop it 4 times. And while that may seem daunting and you're thinking, oh, 4 times, really? Let's go to the front. It's not bad. I promise. It's so quick and easy to do. And before you know it, it becomes like, you know, clockwork. You just, you go from one step to the next, to the next, to the next. You don't even think about it anymore. And you just quilt anything. Got to find my file here first. This is what we're calling clear blue tiles. So I am going to, let me back up. This design, the plaid design that was on here, is what we would refer to as an orange design. Orange designs, I've talked about this in the past. Let me show you on here what that looks like. An orange design is one that is stitched onto orange fabric. That's all it is. It's just kind of like a key. It's a reference for you to go, okay, orange designs only work with the block by block method. Anything that's stitched onto blue fabric or black fabric are borders, okay? Anything that's stitched onto blue fabric or black fabric can be used with clear blue tiles or block by block. It can do both, all right? So when you are looking for an all-over quilting design that can be used with clear blue tiles, always look at what it's showing. Is it in blue or is it in black? You're golden, okay? You can use that file. But since the plaid, let's look here, number 8 shows that it's plaid and it's on orange, I can't use it with clear blue tiles. And the reason is because orange designs have what we call traveling lines. That means that plaid is going to have all this, without having an, here, let me see if I can show you on this pillow. Can we get a really up close of this? This will make more sense. The reason why you can't use the plaid with clear blue tiles. And that's because all of these lines, let's see if I can get a shadow on there. Do you see all these lines? They have to travel somewhere to get to the next area. So what happens is that it stitches all the way over here and then it travels down and now stitches all the way here and travels down and then stitches across. So you're going to have basically kind of like a rectangle outline all the way around it. And you don't want a whole bunch of rectangles all over your quilt, right? So you always use either a blue design or a black design with clear blue tiles because those are all over quilting. That means it's kind of just like random, sweet and swirly and all those things that doesn't have traveling lines. So what I'm going to do here is I'm not going to use the plaid quilting. I'm going to find a blue design that I like, which is, I'm going to use the shamrocks again because it's part of the download. And we do have other background quilting designs for St. Patrick's Day if you want to check them out that are blue. But this one, I'm just going to use the same clover design that came in the bundle download. And I'm going to pull up the folder that says clear blue tiles. Okay. There's 2 folders that come up. There's block by block folder and there's clear blue tiles folder. I want to find the clear blue tiles folder because guess what? It doesn't have the outer lines around it. Okay. All right. The more you practice this, the more you use it, the more easy this becomes. And you just won't even have to think about it anymore. You'll be like, oh, That makes sense. I got a blue fabric on there. I'm going to use clear blue tiles. I got a black fabric on there. I'm going to use clear blue tiles. I got a blue or a black fabric on there. I can use clear blue tiles or block by block. But if I have an orange fabric, it's only block by block because of the traveling lines. Let that sink in, and it will be so simple. Okay. So I'm going to use the shamrocks or the clovers. I can't remember what it's called. And I'm going to use the clear blue tiles folder to, if I can find it on here, to do it. Okay. Clear blue tiles. And I'm using PES. And now I'm going to find my 4x4 design, right? That is not it. Let's see. I found it. Okay, so now I've got my 4x4 design pulled up. It's a clear blue tiles design, and I could do this, okay? I just thought of one thing that's a little bit different. Time out. Time out.
I was thinking the cross stitch.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's exactly what I just thought of, Andrew. You reminded me. Everything I just said is correct. And everything I just pulled up is correct if you are doing the main method of clear blue tiles with like a quilt that can fit that's larger than a hoop. But because we are doing a design, a bigger design and a smaller hoop, or we're doing something that doesn't fit in the hoop. Sorry. Ooh, I'm kind of all over the place now. I am going to do one more thing before getting to that background quilting. And that is I want to stitch some crosshairs. Okay. Crosshairs is, and I'm actually, you know what, I'm just going to show it. I'm going to draw it on here. Do I have a pen? Oh, Bria. No, I'll do it with my blue pen. Don't do this. Find the crosshairs on your machine. Maybe I should just find the crosshairs on my machine. I'll just find them. Okay. Backing up, guys. On the clear blue tiles, USB, also on the Kimberbell website, you'll find this. It's a free download. You're going to find something called centering crosshairs. I think I have it here. I hope I have it here. And I do have it here. Yes. Okay. See, we're good. I'm going to do it the right way. I won't do any shortcuts. All right. Andrew's like, this, you got to do this. I'm like, what, time out? No, this is crosshairs.
Eddie says you need lunch.
Yeah, it's been a long morning. I want to do crosshairs on this. This is the only technique that's different than the regular clear blue tiles method. Because normally with clear blue tiles, you don't use stabilizer and you don't need to do crosshairs. But if you have a project like what I'm showing here today, then this is the way you can do it. All right. And you know what else I'm going to do? I'm going to change my thread to dark so that you can see it better. So let me quickly do that. There we go. Did I mention this is live? La-di-da-di-da. There we go. All right. Never let them see you sweat. I'm going to do some crosshairs. So that I know where this ends up going. Where to center this. It's going to happen really fast. You know, I love the fact, Andrew, that you knew that you were like, crosshairs. It's like he's filmed this a few times. Just a few. He didn't know anything about machine embroidery when he took this job, but now you know it all, right? You're an expert. He truly is. He does know his stuff. He's caught on fast.
Next demo is by me.
That's right. Hey, I like that idea. Would you guys like to see Andrew here at the table? I'll be behind the camera. How's that? All right, let's do the, he's laughing at me like I can't do that. What? All right, let's go to the above camera. Here's the crosshairs, my friends. This is where I'm going to be. Oh,
Yeah,
no.
top camera's out of battery.
Top camera's out of battery. Even better. Okay, we'll just do it right here. Like I said, never let them see you sweat. So we've got the crosshairs. I did it for real this time. This is actually on the Clear Blue Tiles USB, and it's also on the website. This is what you're going to want to do in this case. Again, this is not a normal thing for Clear Blue Tiles, because normally you would hoop just no stabilizer, and you would hoop all 3 layers of your fabric. You would hoop your top, your batting, and your backing. This time, we just need something for this to grab onto. So we've hooped our stabilizer and we've done crosshairs. Now, I'm going to take a very fancy schmancy tool. It's called a thumbtack. Yes, it's that fancy, right? This is a flathead. I say that facetiously. This is a flathead thumbtack. And you're going to turn your hoop to the other side, to the wrong side. And you're going to place the tip of that thumbtack smack in the middle. Okay, this is the back side of my hoop, guys. I'm going to turn it to the front. Now that we don't have an overhead camera, you're really going to make me work for this shot. I need to place, wow, there we go. I need to match up one of these center dots with the tip of my thumbtack right here. Do you see that? There we go. That's a little better. Okay, that's a nice sharp little tip of the thumbtack. I want to place this design. I can choose any of the 4 crosshairs I have so far. I'm just doing it one at a time. But remember, I'm going to make sure that whatever my arrow on my fabric pointed to is also the top of my hoop. All right. So I'm going to try this out, holding this up in the air. Da, 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 da. I feel like I'm in the circus. Here we go. Guys, I can barely do that in the air, but I think I'm going to place it down on here first. There we go. All right. Oh, we got it. That's a good shot, Andrew. There we go. You see what I did? The thumbtack has gone through the middle. The center point that we just marked, it's right there. But to make sure that it's nice and straight, I'm actually going to use, what do we call this thing?
Grid.
Plastic grid. That's what it's called. Yeah. I think I do need lunch. Okay, so I'm going to place that right over the center too, so that I can make sure my crosshairs are in alignment with my grid. Now, if you don't have a grid, no worries, my friends. I have a video on how to make your own grid for any hoop you have, so don't worry about that. Or, of course, if you have a machine that has a camera feature, then that will also help. But see, if I had this like turned a different way, oh, see there, my pen just went out. There we go. Let's try this again. If I had that all ski-wampus, okay, and it wasn't straight up and down, and I put my grid on there, you would see that my crosshairs don't match the crosshairs on the grid. So what you want to do, can we do this one? Is make sure this is straight up and down. Your thumbtack is through the center point. I put my grid on. It's up and down. My crosshairs align. We're good. Okay. Now, I can tape this down so it doesn't shift when I go to place it on the machine. And the most important thing I want you to do at this point is take out that little darn thumbtack. Don't forget. Don't forget the thumbtack. It's going to be bad day for you if you forget the thumbtack, because you don't want to run over the thumbtack with your machine, right? All right. Now that that's done, I'm going to place this onto my machine. I'm going to find my background quilting design again, and then I can stitch. And I got to go back to my menu. Here we go. I'm going to use, I think it's, what is it? St. Patrick's Day 4, something like that. Okay, as I'm finding that, any questions? No, that's not what I want. Any questions I can help answer? 2. New tiles.
Someone said new tape techniques take time to sink in. Great explanation.
Oh, good. I'm so glad. Thank you.
If you didn't hear that, sorry.
Okay.
New techniques take time to sink in, but great explanations.
Yeah.
So stick with it.
Yes, just stick with it. And when you do, your whole world is going to open up with embroidery. You're going to go, wait a minute, I can do that. I can do that whole thing on my embroidery machine, and I don't have to have like the 9x14 hoop. Now, certainly if you have a 9x14 hoop, that's awesome because you're going to have less hoopings, right? But if you have a small hoop, you can still quilt on your home embroidery machine because of Clear Blue tiles. It's just awesome. I can't say enough good things about it. Very, very happy with that product. All right. And I've seen people do some pretty substantial size quilts on Kimberbellas and Fellas. I've seen quilts, table runners, pillows, bench pillows, you name it. It's awesome. Okay, guys, I am ready to stitch. Are you ready to see how cute this stitching is? I'm going to put my foot down. Everything is in place. I'm ready to stitch. And I would just continue this process until we get it all stitched out. We're not going to stitch it all today. You've got better things to do, right? Or you want to just get going on your stitching. Am I right? Barbara says, ready. Yeah. Oh, those little clovers are so stinking cute. All right. Let's see. Lana says, tape thumbtack to back, place fabric, remove tape, remove thumbtack. Yeah, you absolutely could put tape on top of that head of the thumbtack, and that's a great idea too. Yep, love it. All right. This is almost done. Are you guys having fun? Woo! I am. I truly am. It's just fun. Talking about clear blue tiles is something I can do all day long. There are so many possibilities with this. With this specific technique that I'm sharing with you, let's go ahead and go to the front camera. With this technique that I'm sharing with you, with the stabilizer and doing the crosshairs and all that, that means like if you wanted to embroider a background quilting design on an apron or a handbag or a zipper pouch or something like that, this specific technique works wonderfully for that. And it is spelled out in the book that's included in here. Okay. But if you are doing a quilt or a pillow or something that you want the quilting to be on the top through the middle and seen on the back, then you could use just the regular clear blue tiles method that's outlined in here. We've got lots of videos on it, and you don't have to use any stabilizer for that technique. Okay, no stabilizer and no crosshairs. So just 2 different ways to use clear blue tiles. Look at that. We are done with our first hooping. Remember the stamp? The stamp, you guys. If I had dipped that in ink and I placed it, boom, right there. That's exactly where the quilting landed. And now I can just repeat these steps to do this next one. I would take this out of the hoop. I would cut away the extra stabilizer. Let's go ahead and go to the front. And then I would hoop more stabilizer, do my crosshairs. Crosshairs, Andrew, right? And then do the same thing. I would take the thumbtack and make sure that it matched with that center dot, and voila, whoop, done. Do that 4 times on this particular block, and you have background quilting. Isn't that awesome? So fun. All right, guys, it has been quite the lunch hour, hasn't it? Lunch hour-ish is what I like to say, ish, because sometimes they go a little shorter and sometimes they go a little longer. But hopefully that helped those of you who have smaller hoops to truly feel like, hey, I got this. I can do this even without the biggest of hoops. It's just going to require a little more hooping, and that's okay. It was easy, right? And if we're not in a rush, then, you know, we have a saying here at Kimberbell. I've said it often here on this program. It goes like this: who cares how long cute takes? Am I right? So all these projects are like, oh my gosh, that's going to take so long. We say, who cares how long cute takes? It's all just so cute. You got to do it all, right? All right. Well, certainly, once again, I hope that helped. If you didn't see the earlier one again on Monday, you can go back to part 1. Today was part 2. And then finally, we'll meet again at 12 noon on Friday to put it all together and to show you how the quilting is done in the borders and on that flange border. So can't wait for you to join me then. Thanks for joining me today. Really appreciate your support, and I hope I was able to help you out just a little bit as well. And we'll see you on Friday. Take care. Bye-bye.